Social movements and political organizations in Haiti held protests in Port-au-Prince against the administration of Jovenel Moise. The demonstrations took place in the framework of the 250th anniversary of independence hero Alejandro Petion. Thailand's health minister oversees COVID-19 vaccination of frontline workers at a Mozambican hospital as people from Myanmar enters Thai territories seeking shelter from violent military crackdowns. This Friday, a train derailed inside a tunnel in eastern Taiwan, killing at least 54 people, with rescuers still scrambling to reach others trapped inside. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Gladys Quesada. In the day that marks the 250th anniversary of the independence hero Alejandro Petion, this Friday in Haiti, protests against the administration of Jovenel Moise continued. Social movements and political organizations kept rejecting the intentions of the head of state to remain in office despite the accusation of its illegality. The demonstrators started protests in the capital, Port-au-Prince, where they accused Moise of establishing a dictatorship through a new electoral reform. Some spokesmen have insisted that the international community, especially the United States and the OAS, should withdraw their support to Moise, whose administration maintains high rates of violence, unemployment, and shortages of medical supplies to attend the COVID-19 pandemic. On Friday, the National Indigenous Organization of Colombia denounced the assassination of Wayuu indigenous people leader Aura Garcia in La Guajira department. Garcia was a traditional authority of the Arranchi community in Uribia municipality. According to the denounce, two unknown individuals ambushed her and shot her to death on Wednesday afternoon. Previously, she had denounced several threats that led her to request protection for her and Wayuu women in the community. The indigenous organization said that despite Garcia's warnings, competent authorities did nothing to ensure her life and safety. Wayuu indigenous people have been struggling for years against coal mining in La Guajira. Garcia is the 41st social leader murdered so far this year. Ecuador's National Emergency Operations Committee on Thursday suggested that President Lenín Moreno decree a state of emergency in at least 8 provinces of the country due to the surge in COVID-19 cases. The committee recommended the new measures to face the health crisis in the hardest hit provinces of the country. Committee President Juan Zapata pointed out that the restrictions will be enforced for a period of 30 days and measures will be warranted so that citizens can exercise the right to vote in the second round of the presidential elections scheduled for April 11th. The suggested measures will come into effect on April the 9th and security forces will be in charge of ensuring compliance. The Bolivian far-right is calling for a pact of silence whereby it pledges to abandon its claim of electoral fraud in the 2019 general elections, which were used as a pretext for coup against the Evo Morales government, in return for the current government ceasing to speak about the coup and halting the ongoing investigations and prosecutions against the coup plotters. The movement towards socialism has rejected this so-called formula for impunity. Our correspondent, Freddy Morales, has the story.
Far right is to impose a sort of tie. They stop accusing the movement towards socialism of electoral fraud in 2019, which has never been proven, and in return, the party stops its denunciations of a coup and holds the open legal proceedings for the extreme violence carried out by the de facto government.
It's now a matter of understanding that the trials currently on the way are not trials established within the country's regulations. Human rights are violated.
The movement towards socialism was overthrown in November 2019 under the pretext of electoral fraud denounced by the Organization of American States. One of the victims of the ensuing repression was Patricia Arce, mayor of Pinto, in 2019.
Not even an animal is treated as I have been treated, and not only me, but many people. Where was the Catholic Church? Where were they to demonstrate against this? Where was the OAS? Where were the international organizations?
The shock groups preparing the coup humiliated Mayor Patricia Arce. They cut off her hair, beat her, sprayed her with red paint, and thus humiliated. They paraded her around her municipality.
We have identified 20 people. We have sent details to the prosecutors in charge. We have sent photographs and where they lived, and the photograph of those who were participating, and what the extent of their participation was. They have gone on to burn the municipal building. These have been very difficult moments that we have experienced, and now the Catholic Church comes along and says we should not talk about a coup d'etat or fraud.
Only with the return of democracy did the judicial process promoted by Patriot, now a senator of the plurinational state, begin to progress, with difficulty, supposedly due to the lack of evidence.
They were summoned to testify, and according to the prosecutor's evaluation, there was not enough evidence despite the fact that we had presented. There's only 5 people charged, and to date there is not a single detainee.
While the victims of the coup and the de facto regime are demanding justice, the far right, its media, and the Organization of American States are promoting what they have called a pacification agreement that involves suspending all judicial proceedings and releasing those who have been detained so far as part of the investigations into the violence.
The Chilean Senate is set to debate the constitutional amendment that will allow the postponement of the upcoming elections for 5 weeks due to the critical situation posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. The reform was approved by the Chamber of Deputies with 126 votes in favor, 3 against, and 11 abstentions. The Senate Committee on Constitution, Legislation, Justice, and Rules of Procedure approved the bill in general on Wednesday, but the plenary of the Senate has until Thursday to submit any indications regarding the details of the reform and issue the final approval. President Sebastián Piñera requested the change from April the 10th and 11th to May 15th and 16th, arguing that the health crisis required the postponement of the vote. Chile has reported close to 1 million COVID-19 cases and over 23,000 fatalities and seen a surge in recent months. President of the United States, Joe Biden, has directed the Pentagon to begin removing some military capabilities and forces from the Gulf region. In moves that haven't previously been reported, the U.S. has removed at least 3 Patriot anti-missile batteries from the Gulf region, including one from Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia that had been put in place in recent years to help protect American forces. Other capabilities, including an aircraft carrier and surveillance systems, are being diverted from the Middle East to answer military needs elsewhere around the globe, according to U.S. officials. Biden pledged after taking office that he will recalibrate the U.S.-Saudi relationship, taking several steps against the kingdom, including freezing the sale of offensive weapons that Riyadh has used in its 6-year military intervention in Yemen. He also made public an intelligence report saying Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, the country's de facto leader, approved the operation that led to the 2018 killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. And we'll take a short break now. Follow us on Twitter at TeleSUR English and Gladys TeleSUR. Welcome back to From the South. Thailand's health minister Anutin Charnvirakul oversees COVID-19 vaccination of the frontline workers at Syrian hospitals as people from Myanmar enters Thai territory seeking shelter from violent military crackdowns. The local hospital in the kingdom's northern Sub-Moe district, which has recently seen an influx of ethnic Karen refugees fleeing airstrikes by the Myanmar military junta. The village in remote northern Thailand became a hub of activity this week when it received refugees fleeing Myanmar. Since the weekend, the Myanmar military has launched near-daily airstrikes in Karen state, targeting strongholds of the Karen National Union, the first such attacks in the area in 20 years. Around 7,000 people fled their villages. About half of them hide in the jungle, and around 3,000 crossed the river into Thailand.
I feel pity for them. I want them to be safe, and I want them to be treated fairly with all humanitarian right that they have.
On Friday, Spain received over 1 million doses of the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine, which is distributed all over the country. Only 10% of Europe's total population have received one vaccine dose, and 4% have received two, according to the WHO. Amid surging cases, authorities in many EU countries, including France, Italy, and Belgium, have been forced to reimpose restrictions, but after more than a year under such measures, populations are becoming increasingly wary. The EU's stalling rollout stands in stark contrast with China, where the virus first originated, where biopharmaceutical firm Sinovac said Friday a third production line for its COVID-19 vaccine has been put into use, doubling its annual capacity of jabs to 2 billion doses. The government of Chile has declared the total closure of its borders during the whole month of April due to the health emergency posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. The measure that will come into effect as of Monday, April the 5th, was announced on the same day the country registered the highest number of daily COVID-19 infections since the beginning of the pandemic at over 7,800. In addition, authorities registered 193 new COVID-19 related fatalities in the last 24 hours. The government also announced an earlier start of the curfew that has been enforced for the past year at 10 p.m. and the restriction of some activities considered essential until now. These measures follow a strict lockdown that has been enforced since last weekend for some 16.5 million residents. Bolivian Health Minister Jason Ausa announced that the country will close its border with Brazil from Friday for at least a week to protect against the COVID-19 variant first identified there, which has sparked a surge in infections in Bolivia.
Closure is in effect as 0 hours from Friday for a period of 7 days at the border points with the Federative Republic of Brazil. Daily border transit will be allowed for a period of 3 hours. A certified negative real-time PCR test will be required for all persons and all travelers over 5 years of age. Self-isolation for at least 10 days after entering Bolivian territory will be required, as well as a sworn statement of the place of stay and a real-time PCR test to be carried out on the 7th day.
According to a report released Thursday by Brazil's National Confederation of Municipalities, more than 600 Brazilian municipalities are at risk of running out of medical oxygen. Some cities, such as Sao Paulo, recently announced the installation of oxygen cylinder factories to supply hospitals in the face of the risk of a complete lack of supplies. In addition, in another 1,141 municipalities, there is a risk of a lack of intubation equipment for COVID-19 patients who require artificial ventilation. In Argentina, people aged over 70 continue to receive Russia's Sputnik V COVID-19 vaccine in Buenos Aires province, as the country experiences a second wave of the virus with more than 16,000 new cases in one day.
We are between 60 and 70% occupancy of intermediate care beds and intensive care beds as well. Today I'm getting my first dose and in 3 months the second one, and I'm going to be as excited as I am right now. I'm waiting for the vaccine because I have faith that we are going to escape from this pandemic, and for that to happen we need things like this, vaccination. Hopefully it will be over after that.
And Argentina has now vaccinated more than 2.3 million people as authorities work non-stop to secure different vaccines to tackle COVID-19. Our correspondent, Juan Carlos Bartolota, brings us more details in the following report.
In a race to protect the health of the population and have the tools to face the pandemic, the Argentine government continues to bring shipments of vaccines to the country. This week, 300,000 doses of the Sputnik V vaccine arrived at the Ezeiza airport, of which 250,000 are of the first dose, while another plane already left for China for the next shipment.
We are receiving a new Aerolíneas Argentinas flight that is bringing 300,000 doses of vaccines. These are 252,000 doses of Component 1 and the rest of Component 2, and en route to China is another flight run by our flagship airline to bring another 1 million doses. And we are working together to continue bringing the greatest number of doses as soon as possible, with all areas of the national government working together.
Meanwhile, Defense Minister Agustin Rossi offered details on the number of vaccines the country has and their importance at a time when the consequences of a second wave are already being felt. With this shipment of vaccines that is arriving, we have secured 5.8 million doses that are arriving in Argentina, and when the plane that just left for the People's Republic of China returns with 1 million doses of the Sinopharm vaccine, we will be close to 7 million doses. Therefore, the goal that we proposed, which was to normalize the frequency of the reception of vaccines, and therefore the pace of the vaccination campaign, is slightly faster. We have the objective of vaccinating the greatest number of Argentines, and above all, the at-risk population, to have the best response, as what is clearly being witnessed now is an increase in cases. Since the end of December, Argentina's flagship airline has been conducting special flights operations with the objective of bringing vaccines to the country. In the 10 completed round trips, nearly 4 million of the doses elaborated by the Gamaleya Institute were brought to the country, while this Wednesday, the 11th plane departed with the same destination, although the amount of doses it will bring was not specified.
Juan Carlos Bartolota, TeleSUR, Argentina.
The Russian Direct Investment Fund and top-rich pharma have agreed to produce over 100 million doses of the Russia's two-shot Sputnik V vaccine against COVID-19 in China. The fund, which markets Sputnik V globally, said the two sides plan to cooperate on clinical trials in China and to promote its use there. Top-rich Pharma, a subsidiary company of one of China's pharmaceutical market leaders, Tibet Rhodiola Pharmaceutical Holding, will be able to distribute the vaccine in mainland China as well as in Hong Kong, Macau and Taiwan, subject to all appropriate regulatory approvals. To date, Sputnik V has been registered in 58 countries globally, with a total population of over 1.5 billion people. And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Dozens of people are feared dead after a packed train derailed inside a tunnel in eastern Taiwan on Friday at the start of a long holiday weekend, with rescuers still scrambling to reach others trapped inside. Police said at least 54 people were classified as showing no signs of life when rescuers reached them in what looks said to be the island's worst rail disaster in decades. A further 70 people were still thought to be trapped in carriages inside the tunnel, while around 60 were rushed to the hospitals. Officials said the accident could have been caused by a maintenance vehicle sliding down an embankment and striking the train before it entered the tunnel near the coastal city of Hualien. China and Indonesia will deepen communication and cooperation to integrate strategic synergy, said Chinese State Councilor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi at a Friday meeting with his Indonesian counterpart, Retno Marsudi, in Nanping City. Wang said China and Indonesia, both as major developing countries and representatives of emerging economic bodies, share many common interests and similar development philosophy. Their strengthening of strategic communication and deepening of cooperation will not only benefit their own development, but also will have a positive impact on the region and the world. The two countries are bringing their relationship to a higher level in various fields, including vaccine, digital economy, cloud computing, and marine environment protection. China is willing to bring the regional comprehensive economic partnership into full swing, along with the Association of Southeast Asian Nation member countries, including Indonesia. The two sides also exchanged views on issues such as international and regional situation and agreed to join efforts in safeguarding the legitimate rights of developing countries to improve world stability and prosperity. Niger's newly elected President Mohamed Bazoum is sworn into office in Niamey. The inauguration marks the first ever transition between elected presidents in Niger's 6 decades of independence from France. but the Sahel's country instability and insecurity have deeply underscored in the run-up to Friday's ceremony. It is important to recall that in the early hours of Wednesday, after gunfire broke out near the presidency in the capital Niamey, the government announced an attempted coup had been thwarted. During his inauguration speech, Niger's new president, Mohamed Bazoum, denounced war crimes committed in his country by terrorist groups.
For a long time, the criminals of the Islamic State in the Greater Sahara, affiliated to Daesh, almost exclusively attack the defense and security forces, but for some time they have begun to attack village chiefs and then progressive civilians in an indiscriminate manner. Since last January, they have been carrying out massacres of innocent civilians on a large scale, thereby committing real war crimes. Terrorism is a real misfortune for our country.
In Namibia, villagers living near the Okavango Delta have warned their livelihoods are at risk after Canadian company Recon Africa brought licenses from the Namibian government to conduct exploratory oil drilling across the country, as well as in neighboring Botswana. The oil is thought to be situated specifically in the Kavango Basin, a large area which covers most of the Namibia and Botswana, but also Angola, South Africa, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. Parts of the basin are also home to some of the world's most beautiful and spoiled landscapes and a vast array of exotic wildlife, some of which are at risk of extinction, and hundreds of species of birds. Plans to drill for oil have not gone down well with environmentalists or local residents.
Afford a lawyer who could help me to stand up against this oil company.
I'm worried because the things, the oil they are doing. We don't know what the effect of that oil and our environment.
The wildlife will be diminished and the beauty and pure nature that's here will be harmed in some way.
You educated people who already have comfortable lives. You want to restrict development here. That means we will stay poor and probably die poor.
Mozambican military spokesperson have assured that soldiers deployed in the northern town of Palma, where jihadist insurgents launched an last attack last week, have almost entirely recovered control of the area. More than a week after jihadists staged a deadly coordinated raid on the strategic town, killing dozens of people and prompting the evacuation of thousands of residents, many still remain missing. Survivors have streamed into the port of Pemba, the capital of the gas-rich Cabo Delgado province. The attack is seen as the biggest escalation of the Islamist insurgency ravaging the province since 2017. One week after the violent attack in the Mozambican town of Palma, some families are finally finding some comfort in the arms of their loved ones, while others continue to despair without any news regarding those who remain missing.
A lot of people missing. They don't have water. They are just waiting for the ship to rescue them. Those who have money buy a bit of mandioca. Those who don't stay hungry. They were killed also on the beach where I was. They came to the beach where we were, these old Shab rebels. Some people ran away, others stayed, and they took women, boys, and children with them.
On Thursday, the Organization of Oil Exporting Countries and Allies announced the increase of its production from next quarter. At the 15th ministerial meeting, the member states agreed on a gradual increase in oil production levels by May, June and July following the solidification of the COVID-19 vaccination campaigns. The Ministry of Energy of Kazakhstan detailed through a statement that at the meeting it was agreed to increase oil production by 350 barrels per day in May, at the same amount in June and at 450,000 barrels in July. They also announced that the next meeting of the Ministerial Joint Monitoring Committee of OPEC Plus and the Minister of the Alliance are scheduled for next 28th April in order to strengthen cooperation as a guarantee of stability of the world oil market. Vietnam assumed the rotating presidency of the United Nations Security Council Thursday, its second time in the seat during the 2020 to 2021 tenure. As scheduled, the nation will share around 30 meetings and events and represent the Security Council in working with non-member nations, other UN organizations, international institutions, and the media throughout April. According to Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Pham Binh Minh, Vietnam's commitment in the terms is to be a partner for sustainable peace. One of the most important upcoming events is the open debate scheduled for April 19th with the theme Strengthened Cooperation between the United Nations and regional organizations in promoting trust and dialogue in conflict prevention and resolution. Vietnam will also share a ministerial meeting on overcoming bomb and mine consequences and maintaining sustainable peace. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.